fifth generation born to this land. There would be no more Kirklands after him, and he wouldn't go without a fight. As he raced, he remembered the horror of seeing his son pulled out of the wreck, too beat up and bloody for even a father to recognize. Kirkland blood had poured over the red dirt of the canyon that night. He rode, feeling the pounding of his horse's hooves match the beat of his heart. When Staten crossed under the Double K gate and let the horse gallop to the barn, he took a deep breath, knowing what he had to do. Looking up, he saw Jake there at the barn door waiting for him. The rodeo had crippled the old man, but Jake Longbow was still the best hand on the ranch. "Dry him off," Staten yelled above the storm as he handed over the mare to Jake's care. "I have to go." The old cowboy, his face like twisted rawhide, nodded once as if he knew what Staten would say. 1,000 times over the years, Jake had moved into action before Staten issued the order. "I got this, Mr. Kirkland. You do what you gotta do." Darting across the back corral, Staten climbed into the huge Dodge 3500 with its Cummins diesel engine and four-wheel drive. The truck might guzzle gas and ride rough, but if he slid off the road tonight, it wouldn't roll. Half an hour later, he finally slowed as he turned into a farm 20 miles north of Crossroads, Texas. A sign in need of painting and with a few bullet holes in it read simply, "Lavender Lane." Even in the rain, the air here smelled of lavender. He'd made it to Quinn's place. One house, one farm, sat alone with nothing near enough to call a neighbor. Quinn O'Gradyor's home always reminded him of a little girl's fancy dollhouse, brightly painted shutters and gingerbread trim everywhere. Folks sometimes commented on how the house was as fancy as the woman who owned it was plain. But Staten had never thought of her that way. She was shy, had kept to herself even in grade school, but she was her own woman. She'd built a living out of the worthless land her parents had left her. He might have gone his whole life saying no more than hello to her, but Quinn O'Grady had been his wife's best friend. Even after he'd married Amala, she'd still have her girls' days with Quinn. They'd can peaches in the fall and take courses at the church on quilting and pottery. They'd take off to Dallas for an art show or to Canton for the world's biggest garage sale. He couldn't count the times his wife had climbed into Quinn's old green pickup and simply called out that they were going shopping, as if that were all he needed to know. Half the time they didn't come back with anything but ice cream sundae smiles. Quinn hadn't talked to him much in those early years, but she'd been a good friend to his wife, and that mattered. Near the end, she'd sat with Amala in the hospital so he could go home to shower and change clothes. That last month, it seemed she was always near. The two women had been best friends all their lives, and they would be to the end. Staten didn't smile as he cut the engine in front of Quinn O'Grady's house. He never smiled, not anymore. For years, he'd worked hard, thinking he'd be passing on the Double K to his son. Now, if Staten died, the ranch would probably be sold at auction to help support his father's run for the Senate, or who knows, the old guy might run for governor next time. Even though Samuel Kirkland was in his 60s, his fourth wife was keeping him young, he claimed. He'd never had much interest in the ranch, and hadn't spent a night on Kirkland soil since Staten had taken over the place. Quinn caught Staten's attention as she opened her door and stared out at him. She had a big towel in one hand as she leaned against the doorframe and waited for him to climb out of the truck and come inside. She was tall, almost 6 feet, and ordinary in her simple clothes. He couldn't imagine Quinn in heels or her hair fixed anyway except the long braid she always wore down the center of her back. She'd worn jeans since she started school, only there had been 2 braids trailing down her back then. Funny, Staten thought as he climbed out and tried to outrun the rain. A woman who wants nothing to do with frills or lace lives in a